This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Rabbi Yoina Pirkei Avos writes as follows. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, "Amal b'nei chaveroi b'rabim ein lo chelek ba'olam haba." We all know this Mishnah Baal Peh, that if a person embarrasses somebody else, ein lo chelek ba'olam haba. As I stated in Mishnah, Rabbi Yoina writes a tremendous yisoid, and this is an yisoid that we have to internalize in these inyonim. And that is as follows. Rabbi Yoina writes that we all know Hilchos Shabbos. Everybody knows in Hilchos Shabbos we have 39 lamites malachos. There are 39 prohibited activities that are forbidden on Shabbos Kodesh. They did 39 malachos at the Mishkan, 39 prohibited activities on Shabbos Kodesh. Says Rabbi Yoina on that Mishnah, we have something called an Av and something called a Tolda. There's the Av malacha of Bishul, and then there's the Tolda of Bishul. There's the Av malacha of Beireh, and there's the Tolda of Beireh. There's the Av of Teichen, and there's the Tolda, there's the Av of... We have all the Avs and all the Toldas. What's the difference between the Av and the Tolda? So the difference between the Av and the Tolda is, the Gemara tells us, in the Rishonim, the Rambam and others, Poshet. The Av malacha on Shabbos is the actual malacha that was done in the Mishkan. When they actually did something in the Mishkan, that's what we call the Av malacha. The Tolda is, so to speak, the offspring, is the connection that comes from it. It's not exactly the same as what was done in the Mishkan, but it's very similar. What's the difference, asks Rabbi Yoina, between the Av and the Tolda? Says Rabbi Yoina, al pi halacha, there's absolutely no difference. You are being mechalel Shabbos, whether you do the Av of Beireh or you do the Tolda of Beireh. Both of them are a malacha, and being mechalel Shabbos in both cases. Here comes Rabbi Yoina, Rabbi Sai, and he hits big time. Says Rabbi Yoina, there are the Gimel Aveiros Chamurais. There are the three most serious Aveiros that a person can do in the world. Yarek Val Yav. What are those three? Avodah Zorah, Shvichas Domim, and Gilui Arayis. Avodah Zorah, idol worship. Yeah? Shvichas Domim, killing somebody, murder. And the third one is the Gilui Arayis. Idol, Gilui Arayis, we'll explain. So Rabbi Yoina writes as follows. The Av Ki'ilu, the Av Malacha of Avodah Zorah is idol worship. You take something, you bow down to it, you take an Avodah Zorah and you worship it. Says Rabbi Yoina, what is the Tolda? What is the Tolda of Avodah Zorah? Is something that's similar to Avodah Zorah. For example, many people, worship their money. People worship their cars. People worship all sorts of things. That's the Tolda. Says Rabbi Yoina. Let's move on to number 2. Category number 2 is Shvichas Domim. Shvichas Domim means Poshet Pshat, to kill somebody. That's the Av. What's the Tolda of Shvichas Domim? Not to kill somebody, to embarrass them. You embarrass somebody, you cause their face to go white, they lose the blood in their face, you've embarrassed them, the Gemara compares it to killing them. That, says Rabbi Yoina, is the Tolda. Let's move on to the topic of tonight's discussion. That is Gilui Arayis. Gilui Arayis is the Av. The Meiser itself that a person will do, Rachmana litzlan ve'aleinu, is the Av Malacha. What's the Tolda? What is the Tolda? What's the offspring? What's something that's similar to the actual Av? Says Rabbi Yoina, and I quote the Lashon of Rabbi Yoina there in Avos, and he says, "Hamastakel oy ledaber yahoreg va'al yavo." A person, we've said this already yesterday, and we're going to say it again, that a person often thinks, look but don't touch, right? Museum theory. Look but don't touch. What's the big deal if you look? What's the big deal? What do they do anyway? So yesterday we explained Al Pi the Rambam that it's something that's ma'akev es hatshuva, because people don't even realize the severity of such an issa. Comes along Rabbi Yoina and says, we all know how bad Gilui Arayis is, and not one of us over here would ever dream of doing such a thing. But none of us realize, as Rabbi Yoina, that hamastakel, if somebody looks and he stares at a woman in a way that he shouldn't be doing, it's a Tolda of Gilui Arayis. And just like Gilui Arayis itself, the Maisa is Yoreg V'al Yavo. Looking is also Yoreg V'al Yavo. It carries within it the same Aveira, the same severity, the same chumras as the actual Meiser itself. We're going to continue also with the Gemara in Sanhedrin, tremendous Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Ayin Hey, where the Gemara brings over there a very scary story, and how chomer it is to Stakris Benoshim. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, we said over this Meiser before, like I said, we're going to say it again, Chazor in the Inyan is the best thing in these Inyanim. So the Gemara tells us like this: there was a story of a certain fellow, of a certain man, that saw a woman, and he fell in love with this woman, and he became sick, to the point that he became actually sick from being in love with this woman. And he became so in love with this woman that it was actually dangerous to his physical body. It was becoming dangerous physically for him. He went to the doctor. And the doctor said to him, we're dealing with a very serious situation. We're dealing with a very serious situation. If you don't live together with this woman, you may die. Pekuach nefesh. Pekuach nefesh! So the guy goes running to his Rov. So he's taking the Gemara Sanhedrin. The Gemara goes running to his Rov, and he says, Rabbi, just have one of those small questions for you. Right? You have these people sometimes that come along with like those small questions, but really these questions are like mind-boggling, earth-shattering questions that can last for hours and hours and weeks and weeks. So the fellow comes to the Rov and he says, Rabbi, a small question. The doctor told me that if I don't live with this woman, I may die. It's possible. It's a mitzvah! I have to! The rabbi says to him, sorry to tell you, Yoreg va'al yavo. You should let yourself be killed before you live with her. So he goes back to his doctor and says, Doctor, I'm sorry to tell you, my rabbi never gave me a haircut. Maybe he's machmir, maybe this, maybe... What should I do now? So the doctor thinks about it. He says, okay, I have eitzah. What's the eitzah? Again, Rabbi, I'm giving you word for word of the Gemara. Divrei Chazal. Divrei Elokim. And the Gemara continues and says as follows. The Gemara says that you know what the doctor told him to do? Simple eitzah. Go and tell her to stand in front of you without any clothes on. She should stand in front of you without any clothes on. Maybe, it's not living with her, but maybe that will cure you in a way that will satisfy you, and you'll calm down after that, and things will be at ease, and you'll be able to have a healthy life. Goes running back to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, Yoreg va'al yavo. She goes back to the doctor, what am I going to do? So the doctor says, I've got one more eitzah. Tell her to stand behind the wall, and she should talk nice things to you. And listen, how about that? Maybe that will work. Goes back to the rabbi. The rabbi tells him a psak halacha lemaisa. Yoreg va'al yavo. Rabbi said, this is Rabbi Yoina. Rabbi Yoina is telling us, and people don't even realize this, and the point over here this evening is to really infuse us with the realization of what we're dealing with over here. People think it's a chumrah. It's like a midas chasidus. Nice thing to do, if you're really stark a guy, you don't look at women, It's like one of those things. I'm one of those guys. Me? I'm not like so religious, I'm not so frum. It's not my thing, I'm not so machmeh. Rabbi Yoina is telling us that the Meiser itself, we all know, is Gilei Arayis. Overlooking also is Gilei Arayis. As we mentioned yesterday, Mrs. Shalom tells us that a person can do znus with his guf. A person can do znus with his body. He can also do znus with his eyes. There's a znus that a person does with einayim. Nilf be'einayim. A person actually does a znus with einayim. That's what Rabbi Yoina is telling us. And I think Rabbi Sai, we have to give it a little bit of thought to realize what we're talking. As we said yesterday, the Gemara Yuma tells us the excitement of the imagination of Hollywood, how they build everything up, how the excitement, what it could be, what it would be. And if you look at yourself for one moment before you look at something you shouldn't, that's exactly what your brain is telling you. There's something there for you. The imagination is built up in a way that, whoa, look what can happen afterwards. Until you actually do look, and you find that there's nothing there, and it's empty, and you feel even worse. And it's like that salty water that we said yesterday. You keep on drinking and drinking, thinking you'll be satisfied. And you never are. And the benefits, Rabbi say, of walking around, people often come to, their Rebbeim, their Gedolim, their Rebbes, and they say, Rebbe, it's so difficult, what are you meant to do? And the Rebbe tells them, you should know something. You know what it is to be a slave. You're a slave to your Yetzer Hara. You're not a free man. People think, forget, the opposite is true. What do you mean? I can look where I want. I'm the freest man in the world. You religious guys, you can't look at anything. You guys are in prison. It's exactly the opposite. Because if a person does not have the koyach, the strength to fight his Yetzer Hara, he's a slave to that animal inside him. He's a slave to it. He can't do what he wants. the Gedolim, the Tzaddikim, were able to walk in a street, in a makom of Tumah, if they had to go there. And for them it was so simple. Somebody was once in the Mir, not the Mir Yeshiva, but in Mir in Europe. And it was known that in the Mir Yeshiva over there, they had a Seder for 7 hours straight. 7 hours Seder. 7 hours straight. No batola, no breaks, no coffee. 7 hours straight. The new Bacher came to Yeshiva. It was difficult for him. 7 hours straight learning. It was a big change, it was a big jump. What did he do? So what happened was, as they say, he wanted to have a coffee break. So he went to his room, get a coffee. And people said to him, you realize if the Mashgiach Rabbi Yerucham comes down, you're going to be in massive trouble. Now when Rabbi Yerucham, the Mashgiach of the yeshiva, would walk down the street, looking at the Bachman's bedrooms, he was a big man. It was scary, it was petrifying. And at one point when this Bachar was walking back, after from his room to the Beis Medrash, all of a sudden in the corner of the eye, they see the Mashgiach coming the other direction. From the Beis Medrash coming Rabbi Yerucham, and they were petrified. This young Bachar was just doing the yeshiva. He said, what am I going to do? The Mashgiach is going to see me. I'm petrified. So one of the older Bachar said, come here, let me show you something. Walk directly behind me. Okay, he listened. He walked directly behind him. They walked past. Rabbi Yerucham walked past them, and they walked past them. And afterwards they said to him, how did you know? What did you do? I don't understand. You hit me like I was invisible. Like what happened? He said, you don't realize. The Mashgiach sees nothing. He walks on the street, he doesn't see anything. They once asked Moshe Rebbe, how can we walk on the street with all the preachers? He said, what preachers? Doesn't see anything. The Gedolim and the Rebbe said how beautiful it is to live a life of not being a slave to a Yetzer Hara, of not being a slave to that animal instinct inside you. But again, Rabbi Isai, we mentioned this yesterday, it's a very healthy thing. A healthy human being, a healthy male is meant to have these koiches. And these koiches are meant to be used in the correct way. It's when they're used not in the correct way, that's when you have problems. And there's no bigger benefit that anybody here, Be'ez Hashem, everybody here wants to get married, and the gewaldige minors that you'll have of working on it now. These are the years that a person can work on it. If you work on it now, it's so to speak easier than in a few more years when it becomes part of your essence. There's a Mordecai Maisa. We all know Rivka. Rivka had twins inside her, right? Torah tells us, Rosh Posek in the Torah, that Rivka had twins inside, Yaakov and Esau. Yaakov and Esau, twins, and everybody knows the Chazal, that every single time she went past an Avodah Zarah, what happened? There was a struggle. Every time they walked past the Beis Medrash, there was a struggle. What happened? So every time they walked past the Avodah Zarah, Esau wanted to come out. Every time they went past the Beis Medrash, Yaakov wanted to come out. Asked Rabbi Yerucham in the Torah La Parsha. He says, I don't understand. What? They saw what was going on outside? What? They knew there's a Beis Medrash over there, there's a Avodah over there, they were having a fight? What's going on? Says Rabbi Yerucham, such a tremendous word, Rabbi said, listen to this. He says as follows. He says every single person has a compass, a magnetic compass inside them. And everybody knows, whichever direction you turn the compass, the magnet pulls it in the correct way. If it's north, if it's east, south, whatever it will be, the compass always knows which way. Because it's programmed by the magnet to always face the correct direction. Says Rabbi Yerucham, every single person has a compass inside them. And this compass is programmed by a magnet. And if a person sees himself looking at the wrong things, saying the wrong things, hearing the wrong things too often, it shows that the compass inside him, that magnet, is pulling him in the direction which is the wrong way. And there was only one time to fix it, and that's now. Yaakov and Esau had this compass inside them. They had a pull towards the Avodah Zarah that automatically, when Esau went past the Avodah Zarah, it was an automatic reaction to start fighting to get out. Yaakov the same way with Torah, with the Beis Medrash. Therefore, a person has to know which way is the Yetzer Hara pulling him and how to work it himself. So often the people say, they're friends with girls. People want to be friendly with girls, right? They think to themselves, what's the big deal? What did I do wrong? What are they going to do wrong? I'm just a friend. Just a friend. Rabbi said there's a moedik tshuva in Igros Moshe. Tshuva goes as follows. There was a boy, 1975. There was a bocha in yeshiva that started to be friendly with a girl. Not for marriage. Just to be friendly with a girl. And he said, we're not doing any yisurim. Nothing is asa. We're not doing it. Chas v'sholom, we're not touching. Chas v'sholom, there's no yichud going on. I'm just her friend. That's as far as it goes. And his Rebbe in Yeshiva was trying to persuade him that, it's not the right thing to do. It might even be asa. And the Baruch said, do me a favor. Oh, come on, I'm not touching her. I'm not living with her. What am I doing? Oh, we're just friends. We just talk. What's the problem? So he said like this. The Baruch said, I get a letter from Reb Moshe, who was the Gadol Hador at the time, 1975. Reb Moshe was the undisputed Gadol Hador of the world. If I get a letter from Reb Moshe telling me it is 100% asa, then maybe I'll listen. So they penned a letter, and they wrote to Reb Moshe and said, Rebbe, we don't want chumras, we don't want midas chasidus, we don't want shiurim and musa and hashkafa. We're not interested in that. We want bottom line. Mutter, asa. That's it. That's all we're interested in doing. We don't want to know what should I and could I and maybe. No. Give us the bottom line. That's what they wrote to Reb Moshe. Now you have to understand something. Reb Moshe Feinstein at the time in 1975 was dealing with some of the most serious shiurim that existed in Klal Yisrael. He was dealing with, for example, at that time, a set of twins that were born with one heart. And they had to cut them in half and choose which twin is going to live and which twin is going to die. I mean, you're dealing with serious shiurim. Reb Moshe was a busy man dealing with some of the most serious shiurim in Klal Yisrael. He was dealing with cases of agunas, of people's husbands that ran off in the army, whatever it was, never came back, never to return. We don't know what they can do, can they marry or not? Reb Moshe was a busy man. And Reb Moshe wrote in a tshuva, and he wrote as follows. Reb Moshe wrote that when the question came to me, I must answer this immediately. That's how serious it is. Reb Moshe took this question as a serious question. And he quoted the Rambam, where the Rambam says if a person comes close to arayis, it's da'oraisa. Not the actual living together, not the touching, not the yichud. That we know. But the coming close to arayis, the Rambam learns is da'oraisa. And Reb Moshe paskin halacha, no chumras, no midas chasidus, no musa, no hashkafa, asa. Period. Full stop. End. That was the psak of Reb Moshe. And a person will say, I have to take this to heart. Some of this is difficult, and people have said to me after last night's share, a little bit depressing. It's hard. It's difficult. So I want to tell you one thing. We said this again, but we'll say it once more time. When a person falls, and everybody does, because we're all human, what we have to do is get up afterwards. There's a Moedik Gemara. The Gemara in Bab Metzia, Bab Mekamat Aflam and Aleph, says the Gemara, famous Gemara, says the Gemara as follows. You have walking on the road, two people, each one carrying a jug, each one carrying a pitcher, a jug, a glass jug with water inside it. Says the Gemara, what happens next? One of them is walking, and he has over here his pitcher. He trips and he falls. He falls. The one behind him, immediately, a minute later, falls on person number one. Ask the Gemara, Shaila. Very simple. Does the first person that fell have to pay for the second jug, for the person that fell behind him? Does he or does he not have to pay? Right? Shaila the Gemara. Groma, Gami, what happened? So the Lemaisa, the Gemara is Mavur, the Mephoshim say Pshat, and the Bali Musa learn Pshat in this Gemara in such an amazing way. And that is as follows. Such a tremendous Gemara, Rabbi say. That we're not discussing whether or not person number one is chayiv for falling. Everybody falls, it's normal. But why didn't he get up afterwards? He should have immediately got up. And for that, he's going to be chayiv for the person that falls behind him. And the Bali Musa learn, it's a lesson for all of us. We're human beings. The Rebbeinu Shalom made us with a Yetzer Hara. And it's a strong Yetzer Hara. Tavshanayin, hey Rabbi Say, we're living in a generation where you walk out in the street and people will say to you, what do you mean? I'm being tznius. I've got mamish, the long sleeves, the long skirt and all that. The Maisa, there's no tznius going on there whatsoever. We're not going to discussing tznius right now. That's not our point. The point over here is a human being falls and it's normal to fall. And it's okay to fall. But get up afterwards. That's the point. If you do fall, and if it gets difficult, get up afterwards. Because that's what a person has to do. Rabbi Say, I want to say over Gavaldiga Maisa, a powerful, powerful Maisa. A powerful Maisa that you have to listen to, and it may even change the way you look at things. And it's as follows. There was a girl in America growing up who was unfortunately blind. And when she was born, she was blind already. And when she was a young child, it didn't pose many problems. But when she finally got a little bit older, and she reached school age, and eventually high school age, it was difficult. She had to learn her way around to school, learn her way around in school, how to figure out how to write, how to listen to the teacher, do the homework, whatever it was. It was difficult, but she managed. She was a strong girl, and she managed, she persevered, and she went through school, went through high school, and then she went to seminary, all by being blind. Tremendous. When it came to the time of shidduchim, you can imagine she probably thought to herself, well, I've just been miyayish already, no one's going to marry me, I'm a blind girl, why should anybody marry me anyway? And what happened was, a shidduch was suggested of a boy. They went out on a shidduch, they kept on going out, and eventually became engaged. And she got married to this wonderful, sensitive boy that helped her in every way. He helped her in a way, whether it was around the dishes in home, whether it was the shopping for the groceries, whether it was the cooking for Shabbos. In every way, he was the most patient, kind, compassionate man. He had so much patience for his wife, and she really, really appreciated the fact that her husband looked after her in every way that she went. And then, all of a sudden, one day, the husband comes home, and he says to his wife, "You'll never believe what I heard. I was listening to the radio on the way back from work, and I heard such a tremendous thing. That there's a special eye specialist that's coming in to our area, to our town for a couple of days. And he's inviting people who are blind or going blind to come and get special surgery. And he has a certain way and a certain halachic how to treat people, and it's proven to be successful. People who have never seen in their lives before all of a sudden opened up their eyes and saw the colors of the world. And he's offering certain slots while he's in our area. And it's so difficult normally to get into this person, but here he's offering the hours." So she jumps up to the light and she says, "Please, please, please keep on calling." And he says, "No problem," right? He started calling on the way, but it was busy. And she says, "Please," and she starts thinking, "Wow, what's going to happen? Maybe I'm going to see, maybe I'm going to go here, maybe I'm going to go there. I'm going to see what the Rebbe Shalom made and all the colors of the world." And he sees the excitement in his wife's eyes, how excited she is at the possibility of maybe seeing one day. And every day when he comes home from work, she says to him, "Tell me, did you get through? Tell me to get through." The excitement was so amazing. She felt it. And every day he was so upset to say, "I'm sorry, couldn't get through." And after 1 week, when the time was up for appointments, he comes into his wife and he says, "I'm sorry to tell you, we missed it. The appointments were all taken many hours before I managed to even get to the phone. And unfortunately, he's got no more hours left, it's over." And she was crushed. This girl was crushed. Her one opportunity, her window opportunity was open for a few days that maybe she'll be able to see. And all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, it was crushed. And she has to get to the realization that she'll never see again. And this woman will be blind for the rest of her life. And her husband saw how crushed she was, how difficult it was for her, how excited she was originally, and it really bothered him. 3 days later, the husband comes home and says to his wife, "You'll never believe it, I have the happiest news in the world. There was a cancellation by this man, and I managed to get a scheduled appointment for 1 week's time, and he will be operating on your eyes." And you can imagine the excitement by this woman. It was the most exciting day of her life. She starts talking to her husband, saying, "We're going to go here, and we're going to visit this place, and we're going to do this, and it's just going to be amazing." And he's so excited for her. And the day of the operation comes, and she gets wheeled into the operating theater right before the drugs and the sleeping medicine that she got to put her out before the operation kicks in. And she looks at her husband, so to speak. She looks at her husband's direction. And she says, "I just want to thank you for all your efforts. It's just amazing. I couldn't believe this day has actually come. And now this hour is here and my operation is going to come." And he starts to say something. And then he says, "We'll speak afterwards." She goes into the operating theater. She wakes up a few days later after being put out. And they say to her, "The bandages are on your eyes. At the moment we can't open them. It's too much for you. The light going in. It's too difficult. Wait a few more days later, eventually they take off one eye and then take off the other. Slowly, she opens up her eyes and she sees the world. She sees what they talk about, how the world is so beautiful. And there's trees and there's birds and there's a sky and there's a this. She's never seen anything like it. And she just walks around looking and trying to get in as much as she possibly can to make it for all the years. And she's so excited. And she realized at that moment something she never realized before. Her husband was also blind. And it hit her like a ton of bricks. that all throughout the previous years of being married to him, how compassionate he was, how nice he was, how he took her to every shop, how he took her around the kitchen, and he was such a nice, patient person. And he was also blind. She never even knew. Nobody ever told her. Unbelievable. So she said, I'm going to pay my husband back for everything he did for me. And she started taking him to shul, and she started cooking him this supper, making sure he got lunch, and taking him here, taking him there. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, it bothered her. What bothered her? It bothered her that she could look around the world, but she was confined to her house and her neighborhood. She wanted to see the world. She wanted to travel on the ships. She wanted to travel on airplanes. She wanted to travel on trains, here, there, everywhere. But she couldn't, because her husband was blind, and he couldn't go anywhere. And it bothered her that she was stuck in her little daladamas, a little area of house or neighborhood, and she couldn't go further. And every single day, the bothering and the eating inside her got worse and worse and worse, until she makes a decision of a lifetime. And she calls up her husband at work, and she says, I'm terribly sorry to do this to you, this is not really the right setting, but I feel this is the right decision. I think we have to get divorced. What's the matter? I don't understand. And she says, I'm so sorry, I love you and I'll always love you. But you don't understand. I've lived all my life, heard about the world and about this and about this. I want to see it, I want to go. And I feel that you're stopping me. And I feel that you're keeping me behind. I really love you and I respect you and I thank you for everything you've done. But unfortunately, this is the decision. And he tries to persuade her, come on, no, this is my decision, I'm sorry. He says, okay, no problem. That's what you want, I'll give you a divorce. Just give me a few hours to get my stuff from the house and unpack my stuff. And that's what he does. He goes to the house and he packs up his stuff and he leaves the house. She comes in that night into an empty house. But it's an empty house, but the excitement is in the air. The excitement of opportunity. The excitement of what could be. And she goes into her bedroom and she sees on the bed a note. And there's a piece of paper there, was written by her husband. And she opens up the piece of paper and she reads it. She can read. And she reads it and it says as follows: Dear my wonderful, darling wife, I'm sorry things had to end out this way. I never imagined that they would. But this is how you wanted it and I respect you and this is what I'll do. But one thing I want to tell you. Take very good care of those eyes. Because those eyes were mine. A few days ago, I got you the operation. I called up that specialist and I say, I saw the excitement that you had. I wanted to give you my eyes. Take care of those eyes. The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us the most beautiful, precious gift that no computer in the world can create. That is an eye with the billions of nerves that go inside it. And the neshama comes down to this world as a pure neshama. And the Rebbeinu says, look after this neshama, it's a beautiful, pure neshama. And after 120 years, we're going to take these precious eyes and we're going to give them back to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And we're going to say, Rebbeinu Shalom, thank you for these beautiful gifts of these eyes. And then it's going to hit us. And we're going to say what a gift we had. What an unbelievable present the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us. If only we appreciated it. If only we used it in the correct way. And a person has to realize, as we said before, the other person can fall. It's difficult. But get up afterwards. Realize that of course if a person looks after this most precious gift that Hashem gave him, he's zocher to a life of happiness. He's zocher to a life of freedom. It's a matter of being free, of not feeling that you're going to have to look and going to have to see and going to have to do and going to have to hear. Because I'm a slave to the animal inside me. When a person works on Shmiras Einayim, he works on not just looking at the wrong things. He's working on his life. He's working on what's going to be his future marriage. He's working on the relationship with his wife, even though he doesn't know his wife is at this stage. But that's what you're doing. Because by working on it now, you're guaranteeing yourself a beautiful, healthy life. That you'll be able to, Be'ez Hashem, give the Rebbeinu Shalom back those beautiful, precious eyes that He gave you. The Rebbeinu Shalom should give us siyata d'shmaya through learning these halachas. The siyata d'shmaya of sitting here and listening and realizing which issa we're dealing with. And how, yes, it's difficult. And there may be trials and tribulations on the way. You get a little bit caught up and you fall here and there. But that's okay. Just get up afterwards. As long as you get up afterwards, then you'll be okay. Every human falls and that's fine. But if you try, and if it's for those few seconds that you can manage to look away, the schar and the reward that a person gets, not only in the next world, But the hana and the happiness in this world is unimaginable. Unimaginable. That's that reward. Be'ez Hashem Rabbi said, working through this during Shovavim, the Rabbi Hashem should give us takasiyatu d'shmaya. We should be zoicha to give back the precious present to the Rebbeinu Shalom, clean and knocking the shomash and asatu b'ta'irihi, and the Rebbeinu Shalom should give us all a wonderful, happy, and easy life. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.